From one user destroying his $1 million portfolio to another user 50xing his money while in college, we are going to go over the maddest Wall Street bets trades of the season. Strange Manager 6801 is a user who got completely wrecked trading options. For a bit of context, Strange Manager says that he is a very frugal person and rarely spends money on things that he doesn't need. He opened up a Robinhood account, but was so worried he'd lose money that he opened it solely for the Robinhood Gold 5% yearly yield. So far, this story does not sound like the story of someone from Wall Street Bets. But don't worry, Strange Manager got tired of the 5% yield, and his frugality? Pfft, forget that. In fact, he completely skipped the shares part too and got right into trading options. He quickly made a few thousand in profit on his $50,000 account. He sold half his position and let the other half ride out, but the position he let ride out took him back down to break even, which really struck a nerve with him, and kinda just led him to losing $50,000 in 2 days. Definitely a big change in his once frugal mindset. Perryboo1980 said, "Huh. Guessing OP didn't work hard for this money." Strange Manager said, "Was very impulsive. Learned not to F around with options." But whether he actually learned that lesson or not was unclear because we would get this post only a month later. Pray for me. He was down $4,700 on 0DTE SPY puts, and it seemed like he was going to lose even more money. But surprisingly, he said sold for $20K. Smiley face. He wouldn't be smiling for long though, because 2 weeks later, he showed us the most recent screenshot of his portfolio, and with $0 in it, it seems like his prayers went unanswered. Strange Manager went from being scared of investing $50,000 into the S&P 500 to losing $117,000 in options over the course of 2 months. Strange Manager said that his biggest pitfall was trying to revenge trade his way back into the green. He decided that since he lost the money from trading, he'd have to make it back through trading to be even. He says that people who are down a lot of money should just move on and cut their losses and just get a promotion at work or something. He says he is done with options for good. RobBoost330 is a user who we've covered in a recent video, but since then, he's really been walking on a tightrope. And that's saying a lot, because last time we covered him, he went from 25K to 500K, back down to 50K, then straight back up past $1 million. In that last video, I asked you guys if you thought he would be able to keep this streak going, or if he would end up losing it all. And today, you're gonna find out the answer. The last post of his we looked at showed that his portfolio was up nearly $400,000 for the day, which is insane, but 3 days later, even with a $1 million portfolio, he decided to throw everything on the line once again. It was Tuesday, June 9th, and Rob was feeling more bullish than ever. It's not every Tuesday that you feel like YOLOing $733,000 on SPY calls, but I guess this Tuesday was just one of those days. Rob spent $410K on 0DTE SPXW calls at the $6,020 strike price and $322K on calls at the $6,000 strike price. With 70% of his portfolio on the line, a bad day in the market could turn this millionaire into Wendy's Employee of the Month. And well, by the end of the day, SPXW was trading at $6,005, which meant half of his calls were out of the money, and the other half was just barely in the money. But that didn't matter, because Rob sold his calls when SPXW spiked up around the middle of the trading day. He made a total profit of $412,000 for the day, and surprisingly, it seemed like he was about ready to take a break. He said, "It's been fun. I think I'll have to stop myself." Best of all, he already took out about $326K from Robinhood, as shown in this screenshot, so that means his portfolio is $300,000 less than it would have been had he have just left it in there, obviously. Rob proved all the haters wrong. He took 25K to nearly 1.5 mil, and now he was quitting while he was ahead. Except he didn't really quit, and only 3 days later, he woke up to an additional 343K in his portfolio, putting him at 1.77 mil. This is incredible, but little did Rob know, a bomb was about to go off in his portfolio. Rob started off the day by throwing $1.5 million into even more 0DTE SPXW calls. The market initially moved pretty sideways, but about an hour in, things took a deadly turn. His portfolio fell by about $250,000 in just a few minutes, and it didn't look like things were gonna get better anytime soon. But Rob has seen a situation like this time and time again. In fact, instead of selling, he decided to double down on his decision, leaving only $3,000 on the sidelines. And just like that, Rob's portfolio crashed straight back down to zero. Instead of losing it all, the market quickly rebounded and made him another $450,000 for the day. Frankie Lasagna asked Rob a pretty good question, but all Rob could say was, whatever do you mean, sir? Rob had just over $2.2 million in his portfolio, which is a long way from his initial $25K. But the story doesn't end there, even though, it probably should have. Rob kept on trading, and a couple months later, on August 17th, his portfolio definitely didn't have $2.2 million in it anymore. After that, Rob stopped posting to the subreddit, and everyone assumed that he probably made his way even closer to zero. But I can't even make this up. Rob somehow flipped the script once again. On August 27th, he made his grand return to WallStreetBets and posted a screenshot of his $1.4 million portfolio that was up $676K just for the day. Thanks to his signature 0 DTE SPXW calls, he made it back out the gutter a third time. Once again, Rob went from $25K to $500K, back down to $50K, back up to $1 million, then to $2.5 million, then all the way down to $87K, then whoop, now back up to $1.4 million. Rob said, "This week has been glorious in terms of my timing and luck in the options market. So this is for everyone who thinks it's not possible to continue after losing. It just takes a few YOLO bets and some massive balls, and of course some cash to start. Stay loyal." He includes a screenshot of his chart year to date, which also shows that he now only has $39 in buying power. Rob somehow made it away relatively unscathed again, and it seemed like he was ready to cement his status as a millionaire. Until 2 days later, he lost $1 million on trusty 0 DTE SPXW calls. What's even more concerning is that $124 in buying power and the fact that the portfolio value is cropped out. So to answer whether or not Rob lost it all,
I guess we'll never know.
Rob did say that if you like the video and subscribe to Yummers, your next trade will be very profitable. When living in uncertain times, hedging your bets can be a wise move. And with platforms like Kalshi, you can trade on real-world events and use the platform to hedge the positions you have in your stock portfolio. Kalshi is the first legal platform in the US where people can trade on events in all 50 states. You can trade on things like the number of rate cuts we'll have this year, what the US GDP growth will be for the third quarter, and if you're really going for a wild card, on whether or not JPOW is gonna get the boot. Kalshi gives you an interactive chart that lets you see how the odds of a given event have changed over time, which is honestly kinda cool to see even if you're not gonna place a trade on it. And if you weren't already aware, even Robinhood has partnered with Kalshi. Any cash or positions you have on the platform will earn an additional variable APY. This means you can double dip on picking a winning trade and get an additional 4% a year. That's like buying a stock on Robinhood and then getting an extra 4% a year on your portfolio value. Each trade tab has a public thread on it where you can choose to share your thoughts and positions. You can look at the leaderboard tab and see monsters like Global Marco, Bold Venture, and Big Timmy, who have all made over $500,000 on the platform. The site works great on desktop, but they also have a fantastic mobile app, and signing up only takes like 2 minutes. Here's the chart showing public sentiment on the upcoming jobs report for the month, and as you can see, it updates all day long. Will there be an increase of more than 25,000 jobs? Well, if there is, I will make a $50 profit, and if not, this $100 will be snapped to oblivion. The first 500 people who sign up using my link in the description will get a free $10 credit after placing their first trade, so why not sign up and see what you can do with your bonus? Exotic Flatworm 1817 is a user who hasn't had the best luck when it comes to trading options. His first post of his own portfolio came way back on September 16th of 2024, and it definitely was not a positive one. He said, "Good morning, Mullen. Down $64,000 all time with a current market value of only $179, things were not looking great at all." The Alex Knowles said, "Was your sell button broken?" But it turns out that wasn't the case, cause believe it or not, Exotic Flatworm decided to buy even more Mullen. Only 14 days later, he increased his losses by about $3,800 and said, "Mullen is a scam, and also, I am an idiot." Simple as that. Well, Exotic Flatworm didn't have a good time holding penny stocks, so he realized he needed to change his approach to investing. That being said, he started buying options instead of shares. He ditched Mullen and bought $869 worth of Palantir calls that expired in a few weeks. Not much, but baby steps. this was his first options trade. And only 17 days after holding, he was up over $2,400, which was a lot better than whatever Mullen was doing to him. 11 days later, he showed us the next options trade he was in, but this one wasn't going as well as the first. After about a month of holding AMD calls, he was down over $4,600. He wasn't too worried though. He definitely has faced bigger battles than this one, so he kept on holding, except it never moved in the direction he wanted it to. By February 5th, he was down $7,300 and said, "I gotta go back to washing dishes." His calls expired worthless, but funnily enough, AMD had a pretty solid run over the summer that he never got to see through. A couple months later, he posted another picture of his position in Mullen after they did several reverse stock splits, artificially putting his average cost at $386 million a share. Dutchmore7 said, "You invested that much money after seeing this as the official picture of their CEO?" Yes, he did. On August 19th, Exotic Flatworm was tired of constantly losing money, so he got ready to place his biggest and riskiest trade yet. NVIDIA was trading at just about $175 a share, but he felt like it would make its way up to $182 a share within the next 10 days. So much so that he was willing to bet $30,000 on it. NVIDIA actually made it right under his strike price after rising 4% in just 4 days. There were only 3 days left till expiration, but Exotic Flatworm wanted to bite the bullet. He was confident the stock would continue rising, but by expiration day, NVIDIA was actually trading lower than it was when he initially bought the contracts. There went another $30,000. And since then, there have been no more updates from him, so hopefully he takes it easy with all the reckless trading. Bavik222 is a user who traded his way up to billions and billions of dollars. Did he lose it all like everyone else? Let's find out. Bavik's first posts were not about trading at all. They were actually about Mario Kart. But about a year later, he started documenting his trading journey on WallStreetBets. With his first major trade, he bought $3,500 worth of Robinhood calls that didn't expire for a few months. He posted screenshots of his progress a few weeks later, and safe to say, things were actually going great. Up 1,400%, his calls were worth about $53,000 combined. Bavik didn't make any posts over the next year and a half, but when he finally made his return, it seems like he suddenly became much richer than before. On June 9th, he threw $843,000 into Nebius Group, or NBIS. He got calls that had 2 months till expiration, but the stock needed to jump 14% for his contracts to be in the money, so things were definitely looking dangerous. And over the next 2 months, the stock had not risen, but actually fallen by about 1%. 2 months with essentially no difference in share price, it was starting to look like his contracts would dwindle down to zero. The company was reporting earnings in a few days, and this report could very well make or break these calls. Well, Nebius reported earnings and revealed they made billions and billions of dollars over the second quarter, which sent the stock flying. It jumps 25% the 2 days following the report, and even bigger than that, Bavik's portfolio was looking monstrous. He sold his calls for a $2 million gain and said he already entered a new position. He said that he did not build his net worth by gambling on options, but instead by investing in good companies supplemented with an allocation to calls and proper sizing. Right before taking this crazy gain, he also bought $26,000 worth of Zim calls. The stock was trading at just under $16 a share, and he needed it to jump about 5% within the next week for it to be in the money. The stock fell 2.5% the next day, and the day after that was Saturday, so Bavik had some time to sit and reflect. But Monday was a heater of a day because the stock jumped over 16%. Bavik was up 1,900% for the day and got his hands on a $157,000 gain. On September 7th, he posted a screenshot of his Robinhood calls that were down $624,000 and said he'll hold these to zero if he has to. That's the last update we have from him, so hopefully Robinhood does well over the next couple months. Leo S. Lay is a college student who used to be pretty broke, as most college students are, but found WallStreetBets, and we all know that's the road to lifelong riches. He started his journey earlier this year, back in February, with just $2,800, which isn't much, but remember, he was still only in high school at this time. He threw $2,800 into AMD Leaps, and things were off to a slow and unprofitable start. From the start of February to Liberation Day, the stock was down just about 33%. But after April, he says the stock went on a generational run and he sold for what seems like a $3,000 profit. With just about $6,000 in his portfolio, he says that this is where his real journey began. According to him, his first trades were just random weeklies. He bought Tesla puts when the stock went up and switched over to calls when it went down and he thought it was oversold. This strategy surprisingly didn't send his portfolio out with flames, but he didn't think it was going to make him money long term. This is when he read about Donald Trump Jr.'s new SPAC that was being talked about in the daily thread. He quickly YOLO'd into Grab-A-Gun Digital Holdings and CLBR. The merger was very heavily hyped up, so he was up a decent amount of money, but after the merger actually happened, he kinda got rug pulled. He lost about $1,000, which didn't bankrupt him, but it did make him mad. He was trading on emotions and booted up WallStreetBets to find everyone talking about Open. He YOLO'd his whole portfolio on options, but surprisingly, he got both calls and puts. He threw $5K into puts, and before he even sold those, he also got $5,500 worth of calls, which may seem a bit counterproductive. But we should never question a true master at work. He quickly sold his calls for a $6,800 profit the same day. Since the stock was up so high, his puts were obviously down quite a bit, but even if those puts expired worthless, he'd still be up $1,800 on Open. But luckily, the stock came crashing back down only a day later, and he was able to lock in another $3,700 gain. He made $10.5K on Open in 2 days, which is pretty big stuff for a freshman in college. On July 23rd, he threw $8,500 into AMD calls, which was most of his portfolio, but thankfully they had a year till they expired. The stock rose 12% over the next 6 days though, and he sold for a $3,600 gain. Reflecting back on this trade, he says, "I don't even remember why I got 10K worth of AMD calls, but apparently I did. That's nice." He now had about $20,000 in his portfolio, which was very good considering he started with only 2.5K a few months ago. On August 1st, he was feeling extra risky though, so he YOLO'd half his portfolio on 0 DTE SPY calls. And somehow he once again got his hands on another great gain, making 6K in just a few hours. He was feeling so confident that he once again YOLO'd half his portfolio on even more 0 DTE SPY options later that day. Except this time, he got puts instead of calls. He threw 11.6K into 0 DTE puts and sold not too long after for a $2,100 profit. 8K in a day is not bad at all, but he was starting to realize that maybe he was getting a little bit too lucky. He was worried things would fall apart soon, so he did the responsible thing and checked out the value investing subreddit. But apparently, he felt like that subreddit was even more unhinged than where he came from. So back to WallStreetBets he went. And as soon as he returned, he saw someone make a post about the Google antitrust remedies, so he took the most reasonable course of action and YOLO'd into in-the-money calls that expired in 2 weeks. Google was on an absolute tear and rose more than 6% over the next 10 days, which is when he sold for a $13,000 gain. He felt like the stock still had more room to run, so only 2 days later, he threw $28,000 into even more calls. This time, he got calls that expired out in December, but only 12 days later, he sold for a $7,000 gain. With about $40,000 in his portfolio, it would be smart to just take that money and use it to pay for college. But was he gonna do that? On August 29th, he YOLO'd 28.5K into even more Google calls. And in only 4 days, the stock jumped an additional 9%, so he sold his calls for an $11,000 gain. This left him with $52,000 in his portfolio, but it doesn't seem like he's gonna stop trading, so hopefully things stay green. In his post, he wrote, "I just started university this year and nearly had to bag fries every summer to pay my tuition due to the fact that I am poor AF. But this game covers my entire degree. So I am genuinely thankful to this community, because without you guys, I would not have found out about options." That's a statement that doesn't get uttered very often on WallStreetBets. The Sun Also Rises 12 is a user who discovered options and immediately started going all in. Before his first post to WallStreetBets, his last post was made all the way back in 2018, so it's safe to say that this was some important business. On June 12th, he made a post titled, "Just discovered options." Usually that's a pretty dangerous sign, but his portfolio was actually up about 86% over the past 3 months. Sane Man said, "Undiscover them now." But the Sun Also Rises replied with, "Why would I cast away such sacred knowledge?" Another user said, OP about to see here soon why we don't do options for a living. Not to worry though, he replied letting us know that he already has money put aside for a nice cardboard box when this all blows up. Despite all the jokes, he was determined to make even more money in the market, which is why he YOLO'd over $60,000 on call credit spreads on SPY the very next day. This was, of course, a very risky move and, quite frankly, an unprofitable one, because about an hour after he invested, he was already down about $25,000. Down 15% in an hour, it seems like all the naysayers were right. But then, that same day, news came out regarding Israel, so the market started dropping pretty quick. His $138,000 portfolio jumped up to a new all-time high at $193K. Only 3 days later, he got ready for an even rockier trade than the last. He was still feeling pretty bearish, so he loaded up on even more 0 DTE SPY call credit spreads. About an hour into the trading day, the market was not down at all. The Sun Also Rises portfolio was down almost 20% with 114K in it. But he was not gonna back down. He doubled and tripled down as SPY rose higher and higher, and luckily, by lunchtime, things took a complete 180. Instead of losing $26,000 for the day, he scraped by with a $16,000 profit. He now had 157K in his portfolio, which is less than the 193K he had 3 days before this, so he must have had a losing trade that he didn't post about. The very next day, he wanted to push his luck even further, so he wound up YOLOing over $43,000 worth of credit spreads throughout the day. He started off feeling bearish, so he scooped up $5,600 worth of call credit spreads. He quickly sold for a $2,800 profit, and right after that, he risked another $19.2 thousand, and somehow he closed for another $17.3 thousand gain with that one. He still wasn't done though and wanted to go 3 for 3, so he risked another $7,000 and made 6.3K very quickly. Then he started feeling bullish later on in the day, so he risked another $11.5 thousand and made another $5,700 in profit. Altogether, he made just over $32,000 for the day, and he even started to withdraw a good chunk of his cash so that he wouldn't lose all of his profits. The next day, it was business as usual, and he got even more SPY call credit spreads. Just like the rest of his trading days, it started off pretty iffy, but he closed out in the green with a $35,000 profit for the day. And then, only 2 days later, he said, "I do not believe I can go back to normal life." With $261,000 in his portfolio, he said he made multiple years of his salary in 1 week. His last update was posted on June 21st, so hopefully he was able to keep his gains. Thanks for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, and comment who had the craziest trade of the season.